And good evening, everybody, on this wonderful Sunday evening. Karen and I are excited to be with you tonight. We took Easter off looking for the Easter bunny with our grandkids, and we had an amazing time. Go ahead.
It feels like it was forever ago. It's great to be with everybody. Feels like that was a long time ago, and for some reasons, it feels like it's been a long week. Not that that's a complaint, but a lot's happened.
There has been a lot going on. A lot has been going on over this week, so we'll give it a couple of minutes, let folks get in here tonight, because, man, have we got a great show for you tonight. As always, my sweetheart, in her research and the ideas that we've come up with, you know, I can't do this show without her nor the mods. Who do we have on deck tonight, honey?
Well, first of all, we love our amazing mods, and we're giving them a huge shout out because Chris is right. We can't do this without you. Teresa M. And happy birthday, Teresa M.
Yesterday was her birthday, everybody.
Yeah, happy birthday. And Maui Girl, Mimi J2, Laura Waldy, and Miss Sophia. So thank you so much, ladies, for all you do for us.
Yeah, and Miss Sophia's a little under the weather tonight, but we send our love and our best to you up there in Canada. We love our Canadian members and our friends. And quite frankly, all of you who come and support this channel, we're so grateful for you. And of course, we can't do this without you. You support us in so many ways. If we could only tell you, thank you 1,000 times, we would most definitely want you to know how much you mean to us and how appreciative we are that you spend your time with us. Got a lot going on in true crime out there in the world. And, tonight we're going to talk about a couple of different things. We're going to reminisce a little bit tonight in partiality. And sweetheart, what do we have on deck tonight? What were your thoughts on putting this program together?
Well, of course, the biggest news, arguably the biggest news in true crime this last week, was the conviction of conspiracy to commit murder for Ms. Lori Vallow Daybell again. And it's hard to believe it was all the way back on Tuesday of this week, but a jury in Arizona found Lori, I'm going to call her Lori Vallow. I know she's Lori Daybell. I'm going to call her Lori Vallow for this. They found her guilty of conspiracy to commit murder of Charles Vallow, her fourth husband. And it's been very interesting to hear the reaction and the comments from the jurors who deliberated and delivered that verdict to her. So we're going to talk about what the jurors said and what were some of the key turning points, smoking guns, if you will, during the trial that made them deliver a guilty verdict for Lori. And we're going to talk about that. And of course, just to recap, to keep in score here, Lori has already been convicted in Idaho back in 2023 of killing her daughter Tylee, her son JJ Vallow, and Tammy Daybell. Tammy Daybell was the first wife of Chad Daybell, Lori's 5th husband. I got to keep all this straight. So we're going to dive into that. And then we're also going to talk about the latest news with the Bryan Kohberger trial fast approaching. Jury selection will start in July in that. And July is going to be here before we know it, unbelievably. So we're going to talk about a little bit of news, that a ruling or two that the judge in that case has made this week as well.
Yeah, and I'm going to go on the record. I mean, tonight we're going to go back in time a little bit to 2021, and we're going to revisit where we're going to go to Yellowstone. We're going to go to the apartment complex. We're going to go to Chad's house, and we're going to share with you our thoughts then and measure it against what happened and ultimately came out. And, you know, I was batting 1,000.
Still are. I hate to say it, you still are.
And it's on record, and we're going to show you that record, reminisce with you. And then, so I want to go on the record tonight and say, you know, I've been talking to a lot of different people, but I've been one of the only ones who said, when this Bryan Kohberger thing happened, and we're going to talk about Bryan just for a second, and I took a lot of heat for it in a variety of different directions, which is fine. You know, I'm a big boy. But I had said a long time ago that, yes, there was a fixation that Bryan Kohberger had. And, you know, a lot of folks have said, you know, that was obviously, you know, Maddie, et cetera. And I agree that, yes, she was part of the fixation. Okay. But I'm one of the only ones who has said that I think he was fixated on Bundy. And why did I think that back even when we were there on the ground? My thought process in that is in relationship to the house, the university, the house, and then his study at that time with Dr. Ramsland, you know, studying about serial killers, et cetera. And the correlation that kind of struck me was that the house in of itself became a symbolic situation. And that the girls in the house, all 5 girls, why would this guy pick a house with 5 women just to get one of them? And I think by the grace of God, the 2 were spared. And we'll find out why in court, et cetera. But I'm still convinced that there was a lot of symbolism going here, and there's a lot of correlation with Ted. Now, some people have said, you know, I don't see that, McDonough, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I'm okay with that. However, I think I'm going to be right. And, you know, you guys heard it first here on TIR. And we're going to show you tonight some of the correlating thought processes that were taking place just after Lori had whacked the kids and everybody was in jail. But what we were thinking back then, obviously, you know, going to Charles now that justice has come, you know, we were saying long time ago, just watching the body camera, that there was no question that was a homicide. And how Chandler PD got that piece of the puzzle wrong, I don't know. But the good news is they made up for it. They got it right. She is now convicted. And it's interesting, in this video that we're going to show you tonight, I called her a serial killer back in 2021. And, you know, people were like, no, you know, blah, 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 blah. And
well, and Chris, I think if you're going to mention serial killer, the working definition of serial killer in law enforcement circles is what? Why don't you share that with everybody?
3 or more.
Okay.
In fact, we're discussing what's taking place in New England right now at the Cold Case Foundation. There are 8 bodies stacking up, but that's for another show. But with her, you know, every time somebody gets around Lori Vallow, you know, and they wave the, you know, the owl with the goofy eyes, and if it leans this way, you know, Chad's going this way, that way, whatever it is, you know, there are zombies, you know, zombies everywhere. And so we want to take you back to a couple of locations. We're going to take you to, like I said, Yellowstone. Then we're going to jump over to the house, the apartment, where both she and Alex had his own apartment. Lori had hers. Chad was nearby. And the apartments were near Tammy's school. And Karen and I had a thought on that. We talked about it earlier again today. And then we're going to take you to the backyard of Chad's house again. And just in retrospect now, the information that we know. But this was before we knew all the information that came out in court.
And I also think it's important too, because unfortunately, we are not done with Lori Vallow Daybell in court. There is one more trial that Maricopa County is prosecuting Lori for, as many of you know, and that's for the attempted murder of Brandon Boudreaux. And we are told Lori is going to continue to represent herself, even though she's on the biggest losing streak ever. And we're going to have the same judge, the same prosecutor, Trina Kay, and Lori's going to represent herself. That trial starts at the end of May. So we are not done seeing Lori Vallow Daybell's mug on all over our true crime feeds, screens, and everything. So I just think it is, we thought it was, you know, appropriate and educational for people. If maybe some of you are coming to this case a little bit later, we know a lot of you, and I'm seeing many of you in chat, have been with us since day one on this. And there's just so much information because there's so many bodies that have stacked up around Lori that you almost forget some of this information. So we thought it was helpful for us as well to go back and look at some of these videos that Chris and I did when we were both in Idaho. We went back to all these places, and you know what? It's been like 4 years already. I can't believe it. And so this is kind of a refresher because we're not done watching this malignant narcissist, serial killer / fill in the blank, whatever you were calling her. Yeah, we're not quite done with her yet.
So there were some interesting comments from the jurors, hon, this week.
Yeah,
right after the trial. What did you pick up on?
Okay, so several points. And we know many of you guys have been tracking this too. And so for a number of the jurors, a couple of the jurors, they said some of these text messages between Lori and Alex really did it for them. And the very chilling text messages between Lori and her brother, Alex Cox, one of them was the Nephi comment. I'm just going to touch on that real quick. And so this is all presented in court during the trial. The prosecution presented this. So Lori texts Alex, her brother, just days before Alex shoots and kills Charles in Lori's Chandler home. And she says, this is the text: "Thank you for standing by me. It's all coming to a head this week. I will be like Nephi, I am told, and so will you." A side note, this Nephi is a reference to a courageous figure in the Book of Mormon who was told by God to kill a man. So for some jurors, hearing Lori and seeing that in text messages to her brother before Charles was killed was huge for them. Also, a number of them said that Lori was smiling. Her smiling and laughing in court made jurors believe that she didn't even take this seriously. And obviously spoke to just how chilling and cold and evil of a person she is. One juror said, and I saw comments in chat too. One juror said, I wanted to hear from Tylee. I know, talk about heartbreaking. So for those of you who don't know, the jurors in Lori's conspiracy to commit murder trial, these jurors did not know that Lori had been convicted of killing Tylee and JJ and Tammy Daybell. They didn't know. A lot of them didn't know. Most of all of them didn't know the full story.
Wow.
Some jurors didn't know that everybody inside that Chandler house that day, except for Lori, were dead. So that would have been Lori, Tylee, JJ, Charles, and Alex. And one juror said, so much of the story seemed like it was missing. Well, that's true. That was the decision that was made basically in order for fairness for Lori being tried on this case.
Evidence. It would have been too much. It would have been prejudicial.
Yeah.
Had they known the other pieces of the puzzle. So the judge ruled correctly in the law there.
Yeah. One of the other texts that a juror noted was the one that Lori had sent, saying that Charles, he was Ned before we got rid of him, quote unquote. That was her text. Huge. I mean, Lori may have thought these jurors were stupid, but these jurors were smart. They were fair. They were sharp. And at the end of the day, they weren't buying the load of crap that Lori was trying to sell. One juror said, I thought this was interesting. He said he was on the fence until closing arguments by the prosecutor, and that changed his mind. And also, we were privy to learn that 10 out of the 12 jurors who went into deliberation felt Lori was guilty as soon as that door closed and they all sat down at that conference table. And so the 10 helped the remaining 2 reach the same conclusion by going over the evidence. Also, Lori's casual demeanor the day of the murder, which we saw in her police interviews. I mean, there's no getting around that.
Yeah.
Yeah. She was going shopping for sandals, or I should say flip-flops, and food after she heard and probably saw Alex shoot Charles. Talk about cold, right? And then I just have to add 2 more things that are not juror related, but I have to say absolute highlights of this trial is when Nancy Jo, shout out to Nancy Jo Hancock, prosecutors put her on the stand. She had gone on a date with Charles Vallow the day before his murder. Now, don't forget that Lori and Charles at the time were in a bitter divorce battle, essentially. And so Lori gets to cross-examine Nancy Jo, for those of you who didn't watch the trial and didn't see it. And Lori is asking her, well, do you always date married men? Which Lori tried to dig her, but Nancy Jo's comment, don't flatter yourself, was what she said when Nancy Jo was saying that Charles was talking about Lori on their date. So that was just classic, Nancy Jo is awesome. And then also, if somebody's watching this and didn't think Lori was pure evil, this piece of information should do it for you. We find out during the trial that Lori had Charles cremated. She then FedExed Charles' ashes back to Kay at her place of work. And Kay is Charles' sister.
That's cold.
Yeah. What do you say after that? Your thoughts,
here,
Chris?
you're going to prison.
Yeah.
That is cold. I got the chills when I heard that. I mean, that is just, it just goes to show us, if you hung around her, there's a high probability that you were going to be a zombie at some point. I mean, they had to get to a place where they were wiping all these people out. But once you get that momentum going, at least 5 people, and they were working on number 6. And we're going to talk about Brandon. So set us up for what's going on with that right now, Karen, and because we're going to take everybody back to the storage facility in Idaho. That one's coming up. That's next, right? She going to represent herself?
Yeah, as far as we know, she's going to keep on her losing streak, and she's going to continue to defend herself. So Lori is facing attempted murder, and this is an attempted murder case or trial. And the attempted murder was Brandon Boudreaux. Now, remember, he was the ex-husband of Lori's niece, Melanie, let me get her last name, Pulowski. And at the time, Melanie was going through a bitter divorce with Brandon Boudreaux. And Brandon was shot at, thank goodness, not hit, not hurt. He was shot at outside of his Gilbert, Arizona home back on October 2nd, 2019. So just to put this a little bit in perspective and in context, July 11th, 2019, Alex Cox shoots and kills Charles Vallow in Lori's Chandler home. In August of 2019, Lori takes Tylee and JJ, and Alex is also in tow. They move to Rexburg, Idaho. That's what Chris was mentioning earlier. We're going to stroll down memory lane and go look at the apartment complex that they moved into. And September 9th, September 8th, Lori took the kids with Alex to Yellowstone National Park. Tylee, we now know, was killed on September 9th, again, 2019.
The next day.
Less than 2 weeks later, JJ is killed on September 23rd
Okay, so
2019.
that's a good segue spot for
But
us.
let me just add, and then October 2nd, 2019, there's this attempted murder of Brandon Boudreaux. Again, he wasn't hit, but he was shot at by Alex. And then October 19th, 2019, Tammy Daybell is killed. And we now know that at first they said she died of natural causes. Not true. She was asphyxiated, so she was suffocated to death and died at the hands of Chris.
It's in retrospect now, right? When we're going to go back to 2021.
And I'm not laughing at that, but
when,
yeah.
Right. And right where and everybody in the world was looking for these kids at this time, just up to this point. But we wanted to take everybody, and we walked everybody through. We even talked to neighbors who said, no, she's normal. She was fine. She was a great mom. JJ was running all over the place. But remember, Tylee had vanished. She was MIA. And by this time, the day after they took her to Yellowstone, they dismembered her. And my theory at the time was they used the apartment to somehow incapacitate her, and that Alex transported her over to Chad's property. And that's where they dismembered her. And the only reason I say that was the phone pings at the time. And I think today we'll never know exactly for sure, but I'm not convinced that she was killed on Chad's property. I think she may have been killed at Lori's, put into a vehicle, and that Alex transported her, because Alex's phone pings at Lori's, I think about 12 something in the evening, and we're going to see that here in a minute. And then it shows up at 3:00 in the morning over at Chad's house, something like that. But we're going to get the exact frame. Go ahead.
Just a kind of an interesting note. I know when you really start to break down this time and the dates and who was where, Tammy Daybell was alive, living at her home in September when Tylee would have been dismembered and burned in in Tammy's backyard, and when JJ was buried there as well. I'm not saying that Tammy had a clue of what was going on, because it's clear she didn't. It's just extra eerie, extra chilling, extra evil to stop and think about that. And then, of course, on October 19th, she's killed herself in her very home.
Yeah. You guys ready? So let's reminisce. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, that's all we ask. Please hit the subscribe button and hit the thumbs up. Let's go back to 2021, and we'll do a stop and start as we go through, collectively as a group.
Welcome to the interview room. I'm standing here at the west entrance to the Yellowstone National Park, and I need to ask a question. How in the world does a mother with her brother take two children through these gates here? Come take a look. Through those gates and go see one of the most iconic parks in the world. Okay? Well, I'll tell you how they do it. They're making conscious decisions that are not delusional. Welcome to the interview room. Take a seat. So September 8th, 2019, at approximately 6:40 p.m., through that gate is where Alex Cox drives his truck with the victims, Lori, and himself. And it is this actual spot.
Okay, so the first thought that I had when we were filming this, Karen, and tell me what your feelings are, and everybody else chime in here. That area was selected for a reason. How far was it from the house in Rexburg to that entrance? Do you recall? Huh?
Yeah, it was probably no more than an hour's drive.
It was an hour's drive. And the fact that they were thinking ahead and planning this, that they take the kids to this iconic location where people travel from all around the world. It's almost as if it's, a last coup de grace, for lack of a better term. And I say that because within 24 hours, Tylee at least is going to be dismembered. And they take them here as kind of a, make them feel good or whatever their diabolical problem is. But, I like Shane here said, bon voyage, right? See you. You're out of here. And to think that a mother of one of the children, adopted stepmom to the other, is processing this information, knowing distinctively, in my opinion, what the plan is. Because by this point, they've already killed Charles. Charles is out of the picture, right?
Yep.
And so they've already got the taste of blood. And these people are so sick. And you are absolutely 100% right, Connie. She's no mother. I need to stand corrected. You are right. This demon of sort here, to take them to this. What was your impression, hon, when we were standing there talking about the children? Do you recall that?
Yeah, it was a lot like what you're thinking, because it was such a dichotomy. Yellowstone is a beautiful, stunning, gorgeous place, and it's peaceful. Now, yes, of course, when you're at Old Faithful, there's a ton of people there, and you can be stuck in traffic for 3 hours. So you're really not by yourself in the middle of nowhere. But it is a iconic national park, and so you have the beauty of the place, okay? But you've got these people plotting to kill the children, and this is less than 24 hours before this is going to happen. I couldn't get my mind, I still can't get my mind around how a parent can do this, and an uncle. Let's not forget Alex Cox was there too. But of course, Lori, I can't get my mind around this. And look, I know that for the trial in Idaho for the kids and Tammy's murder, I know there's the whole religious, part that inspired her, motivated her, whatever. I just, part of me still doesn't buy that. And this is just getting rid of, this is familicide. I'm probably saying it wrong, right? Getting rid of people around you and your family that you no longer have use for. Dr. Gary would call it elimination murders for selfish and financial reasons. And yeah, I get it. She's the cult mom and doomsday, and there's all that, of course. But this is just pure cold-blooded murder. And the fact that a parent could take a child there it's just mind-blowing. I'll never wrap my mind around it. And again, such a dichotomy of a beautiful scenic place for families, for everybody to enjoy. And they knew what was going to happen to Tylee less than a day later. I mean, there's no words for this.
Here at Old Faithful in Yellowstone, how a mother can take her children to this place and then ultimately take their life. I just don't understand it. This iconic spot really says a lot about her consciousness of thought, and quite frankly, what they call mens rea, or a guilty mind, okay, or an evil mind. This is malice aforethought in motion. She's very faithful in relationship to taking people's lives. We could count on her for that one. Okay? But I can promise you this, she was making conscious decisions, and those conscious decisions cost the life of both of her children.
Now, if you just joined us, this was 2021 when we were there.
So come with me as we leave the west entrance and head to Buckaroo's Barbecue Grill, which is approximately 0.5 of a mile from here. Now, when Alex came through that gate, he went on this route, and it took him into the town of West Yellowstone. Now, what's interesting is you'll notice straight ahead, that is a cell tower. That's probably where they got the first ping. As you can see, this is a busy town with a lot of folks. So right up here at this light, he would have had to pause, and then they would have made a right turn, and the barbecue place, which by the way has since closed because the owner passed away, is going to be up around the corner to the right here, and then across the street on the left.
Thoughts, Karen? Anything coming to you?
No, I saw Mimi's comment of the barbecue and that kind of thing. It's just, again, it's pure evil. It's hard to get your mind around it. And the obvious questions is, were they plotting something else? Was this just, as you said, a last hurrah? Normal people cannot understand this. They can't understand it at all. And, when we go look at this video again and think about the drive, it's like, how I felt 4 years ago is how I feel right now. I mean, sick to my stomach. It's a beautiful place. It's a place of happiness. And yet what was going to happen to Tylee and then eventually JJ, it's sickening. And again, for a mother to premeditate this and have her brother help her, I mean, the whole thing is just evil and hard to comprehend.
Yeah, and if we look at today, right, as we drove through this back in, like we said, 2021, as we came out of that same gate that they came out of, and we drove to the same places they drove to, and we think about the children. We think about JJ sitting back there, Tylee sitting back there, and Alex and Lori turning and say, "You guys want ice cream? Let's go get ice cream." But fully knowing, completely knowing, just like when Alex took the Jeep in the next case coming up, and they took the seats out, and they took the car seats out, and they go to the storage facility, and they drop everything off while Alex is on his way to shoot Brandon. Okay. To think that they are baiting the children, this gives you a depth of understanding about how evil the human spirit is capable, how much evil the human spirit is capable of committing. And when we think about the depth of that, where, like Rebecca's saying here, it was a plan. Yes, it's not only a plan, okay? It was almost at this point part of a lifestyle.
And that brings me to a point that I can't help but wonder what Tylee was thinking at this point on September 8th. Because remember, you guys, think back on July 11th when, let's assume, she saw her uncle shoot and kill her stepfather in that home in Chandler. Remember when Tylee was with Lori in the police interview room, and they're talking, and Tylee says, "Not me, Mom." When Lori's explaining about dark spirits and zombies and all that, I've always had the feeling after watching that video that Tylee was scared of her mom. And I think many of you, I've seen your comments, and I think many of you agree with that. And you just have to wonder, like, oh my gosh, this poor teenage girl, she's got such a crazy mom. She sees, don't forget, at this point, that murder would have happened 2 months prior. Okay. And I'm still not convinced that Lori didn't tell Tylee off camera and what we don't know of what to say and, rehearsed her or whatever. So this poor girl just saw the stepfather be killed. And Tylee knew enough about what her mom's crazy thinking was. And she said, "Not me, Mom." And now you just got to wonder, these kids are pulled to a new area in Idaho in tow with their crazy mom. And Tylee was being protective of JJ. And now that day they're in Yellowstone. I just wonder, was there any slippage, leakage of what Lori may have said in front of Alex that Tylee could have picked up? I mean, it's a horrible thing to think about, this poor teenage girl. I mean, it's horrible and disgusting what happened to her. But this is like less than 24 hours before, and she was already, I would say, probably fearful of her mom. And she may have had the same pit in her stomach going through here. She may not have thought everything is A-okay. And Chris, you made a really important point 4 years ago when we were there. I remember you said this whole thing was to kind of lower the kids, not inhibitions, but, lower any kind of stress, or it's like what you do, like almost animalistic with a victim, right? You lower their inhibitions right before an evil one would strike.
Here's a thought that's going to blow your mind. Okay. I'm here to help you.
There you go. Exactly.
The witness hears, Bethany hears, or Dylan hears.
Dylan Mortensen in the house.
The suspects
heard that.
I'm here to help you. This is the same mentality. It's the same mentality. There's this idea that if I can lower the victim, i.e., get them a little comfortable, total control, complete violence. And that's what's going on.
So let's take a look of where they went. Okay, so I'm standing at Buckaroo's Barbecue Grill. And by the way, this was an ice cream parlor. So when Alex left that gate, they came to this location and they were here for approximately 17 minutes. The question is, what were they doing here? Did they buy ice cream? Were they taking the children and calming them down, knowing that they, within 15 hours, were going to murder at least Tylee? What does a mother go through? Well, I can tell you this. She's making a conscious decision to come to an iconic national park and then come get ice cream and or food. That tower ping again becomes significant right on the other side of this building over here. You can bet Lori and Alex knew exactly what they were doing.
So the owner died and it's since been torn down. So that's what we're seeing here. These are the pictures that we overlaid, what it looked like the day the kids were there. That town is so pretty in terms of its vibe, the people. I mean, it's a tourist trap. This was the drive home.
And you know, I think everybody who goes to Yellowstone, there's an excitement. Even if you've been there many times before, you know, again, such a contrast of, it's almost like, you know, like a Disney World kind of an idea, you know, a great place of beauty, families, fun activities, all that. And yeah, it's just heart-wrenching what those kids were probably put through.
So here I am at apartment number 175 in Rexburg, Idaho, Lori's apartment. But I'm on the backside, and the reason I came on the backside was I wanted to see, hypothetically, if the children could have been taken out of this house without anybody seeing them. And obviously we know the tower pings of Alex's phone is approximately 11-minute drive on a really empty day, but we have a 21-minute time frame from this location, and I'm going to take you out around the front. I'm also going to take you over to Alex's apartment, which you're going to see is a very close distance. But what I want you to notice is look around. It is really easy to pull out of this driveway or out of this garage and then just evaporate.
So my thinking was, at the time when we were visiting this, we obviously didn't know any of the details in relationship to, you know, the sequence of the murders. But what I was thinking here is, we know for a fact that they left Yellowstone the day before they get home. And we know the sequence of the murders, that, you know, Tylee is killed first, and then JJ, you know, shortly thereafter, a week or so, whatever it is. But my question was, when we see the phone pings that we're gonna see them here in a second, my thinking at the time was, how do I move this person? If hypothetically they would have utilized the apartment as a tool, and when I say that, you have to get into the killer's mind, where they utilize like apartments or cars, areas and spaces of comfort where they feel they are most comfortable to commit such a high risk act that they have a little control over their environment. And my thinking was, okay, if they had taken her out how were they going to get her out of the house to get her over to Chad's property? Because it's almost immediately that his phone early in the morning is pinging in the back of Chad's property. And we're going to see that here in a second. And I don't know if that's ever been answered. There's theories that she was killed over at Chad's property because, you hear this idea, where he says, yeah, I shot the, whatever it was, the raccoon or in the backyard. I think that's Tylee, or excuse me, I think that's JJ. I'm not sure it's Tylee because I think Tylee's a much more difficult problem. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, a gunshot going off, that's problematic. So I'm not sure if this apartment wasn't in play. And that's just my thinking, of course, because it would have been easier for this to have been the play. And when I say that, I'm talking like I was talking to somebody at the bureau, to get her into the trunk and then move her. And now you just back the car up or the truck up or whatever the vehicle is going to be. And, you do what you have to do in that wood shop or the garage at Chad's house.
Now, here's the most important part. You really could have the children inside that apartment, okay? Or inside that garage. As a result of that, okay, they could be taken out of that property without ever being seen if they were harmed. Okay? So let's walk around the front. Okay? Now what's interesting about this complex, we see the doorbell pictures where, JJ's running across, the courtyard. But I want to kind of give you a frame of reference, really how contained and close this is. Okay?
Well, the other interesting thing about here, and Karen, chime in here, hon. The other interesting thing about this apartment complex is so close. Alex has his own apartment. Lori has her apartment with the kids, and Chad is 11 minutes away. And in between that is Tammy's school where she works. So why so close to Tammy's school? And we'll get into that in a couple of minutes too. But what did you think about the proximities here, Karen? Reminiscing.
Well, yeah, obviously this apartment complex was chosen for its location and probably, don't forget, I think they were only there, I don't know, less than 2 months, maybe. She moved in, mid-July, she was still in Chandler, Arizona. So they would have moved in August, and this is now early September. So, I think it's a fairly nondescript place where you could meet your neighbors or not meet your neighbors. You could carry on an existence that nobody would know about, and as you pointed out, you can come and go, drive right into that garage, put the garage down, never see a neighbor. So I think it was chosen for, probably a couple of obvious reasons. But yeah, the close proximity. So Lori and Chad could do what they were plotting and planning to do.
Okay. And JJ was suffocated. But did the autopsy show that Tylee was shot? I don't recall.
I believe the autopsy they could not tell her how she was killed.
Because of the dismemberment and the burning.
Correct. And the burning and all that. So, we don't know. We don't know.
Cause of death. So that means
Correct.
There was no ricochet or indication upon any of the bones that if she was shot, that a round had hit any of the bone. So that's always, something to consider here. But I like the drug theory, the concept of, knocking her out kind of concept. And then if suffocation, i.e., how that little boy passed, don't put it past them that that's not how she died as well.
Right.
And if we,
And Chris, I would just add one quick thing.
Yeah.
So we already know Alex used his gun to shoot Charles 6 weeks before this, whatever. And, maybe he's switching things up with for the kids. Horrible, awful to think about, but,
Certainly has a possibility, hon. Absolutely.
come up here, if you look down this alley here, down this alley about 3 buildings is where Alex lives. So Lori's apartment, as we know, okay, is right here. And let's go over to the front of it. Number 175. 171, 2, 3, 4, and of course 175 is up here. Now, this is her house, and so this is the area where JJ was running across the courtyard. But what's significant, what I want you to catch here, is so from this house, we get a tower ping of Alex's phone. And then if we come down here, he would have to walk this way. It's probably the most logical anyway, to walk this way. And he gets down here to the alley, and he goes to his apartment, number 107. So let's take a walk to 107. Now, you got to be thinking, what is he thinking, potentially? He knows that night that either he, Lori, and Chad collectively are going to do in these children, or he's going to do it, or Chad's going to do it, or Lori's going to do it. Now, I think we can tell from that back garage area that it's real simple to move them. Okay, it's really, really simple. Okay. So we're in the 100 building. So you can see it was a short walk. I want to be respectful of these people here. So 4, show this building over here. 5, 6, and 7 where the 2 green scooters are. This is Alex's house. So from this location to Lori's is less than a 3-minute walk, if that.
Karen, what's your impression of what was going on there when we were talking about this?
Well, just even seeing that short doorbell video of JJ running, and I know we just see the back of him, but he looks so happy. Didn't he just look like, as all kids that age just should be? They should be happy, running, jumping, playing. And again, it is just so heartbreaking and awful that he was killed at the hands of his mother, adopted mother at that. And so I'm still thinking about, oh gosh, I haven't seen that video in a couple years of JJ, just underscoring how horrible these crimes were. And then you even heard on our video, we heard kids playing in the background. You heard, kids yelling and laughing and that kind of thing. And again, I'm going to go back to the dichotomy of the placement of where we are, where we visited, and yet this horrible act of pure violence, pure evil against these kids. Again, with everything, this is, we saw a lot of young families, young moms and their kids when we visited 2 years later. And again, that's just with this whole story, it's such a dichotomy, on every level. Yeah, Lori may have looked normal on the outside, or even, her cousin said on TV movie recently, or excuse me, documentary, she looked up to Lori. It's like all this evil goes on against a backdrop of like normal or happy or family setting or beautiful nature or whatnot. And that is the story. That really is the essence of the story. And when we ask ourselves, how could people who, how could anybody do this? We will never fully grasp it and understand. And again, that's where my mind is when I'm looking at this video footage again. And, thank goodness Lori will never get out of prison ever for these crimes. And we know Chad is going to get the death penalty. He's going to face firing squad for killing Lori's two children, along with Lori, and his wife, Tammy Daybell. So Chad's getting the death penalty. Lori's never getting out of prison. And, I guess justice is delivered. But again, just as a parent, as a mom, I'm reliving this and looking back at this video, and it's like, I keep saying it. I try not to be a broken record. I can't get my mind around this evil, but it does exist. And, Lori is a serial killer. So here we are. We're talking about a serial killer, and who by the way is a professional
is a serial killer.
victim. Say again.
All of them are serial killers.
All
This
of
is
them.
a
Yes.
conspiracy group. Think about it. We have 3 individuals and maybe a 4th. I'm not sure where some of the other people played roles in this in terms of who were in the support around Lori, right? Not her family. I'm not saying her mom or dad or anything like that. I'm just saying close confidants, cousins, whatever the deal is going to be. Because Brandon, is also on the plate here to be taken out and to be killed. And that was kind of a little payback, right, for a messy divorce kind of situation. And let's talk about that here in a second. But let's go. Here's the when we say phone pings, this is where Alex's phone was discovered the night on September 8th. Look at 6:40. They leave Yellowstone, so it's getting dark. 6:45 to 7:02, they're at Buckaroo's Barbecue, which we just showed. 8:37, it's on its way back to Rexburg. At 9:35 p.m., Alex's phone is in Lori's apartment, number 175. Between 9:43 and 9:53, Alex goes to Maverick Gas in Rexburg to get gas. At 10:44 to 11:15, he's back at Lori's apartment. So here's a question. He left Lori's apartment. Who is with the kids between 10:44 and 11:15 for 30 minutes? What's going on there? Because he shows back up at his apartment at 11:44 p.m., i.e. it's almost September 9th, the day Tylee is murdered. And so if we go forward here on the 9th, real fast, here is his phone pings. So he is at the apartment from midnight to 12:44, 44 minutes. He's at his apartment. Guess what? He shows back up at 2:42 to 3:37 at Lori's apartment. What is going on?
In the middle of the night.
At 3:37 in the evening. This is why I think
in the morning, 3:37. Yeah, in the middle of the night.
Yeah, 03:37 in the morning, right?
Yeah.
That would be military time, but you're right, 3:37 a.m. So something's going on at that apartment. Because at 4:37 to 8:59 a.m., Alex goes back to his apartment, 107. And here's the interesting thing. 21 minutes later, he leaves his apartment and he's at Chad's property. Now, so here's the question. Does he take Tylee to his apartment? And that's where the dastardly deed is done? Because at 9:21, he's on Chad's property. and he's there 10:39 to 10:47, and then he's there from 10:57 to 11:39. And then here's the scary part. At 11:52 to 12:02, he goes to a Del Taco.
Which reminds me that Lori goes to Burger King as Charles Vallow is being shot and killed.
Really
Is
good
that
point.
not the very same type of deal?
And then he comes home the rest of the day, as in, my work is done.
So here I am at Madison Middle School. Now the reason I want to point this location out is, if you remember, we talked to some people back at the apartment complex where Lori lived, but they made some interesting observations that Chad and Alex were seen at least helping to move into that apartment. Now, I've been trying to figure out geographically why those apartments were so important for Chad and for Alex, okay? And I just had an aha moment, quite frankly. Because with this school being here, okay, those apartments are right over here, and I'm gonna walk over to the edge of the fence. These condos over here, pan to the right if you can, these condos over here across the street are brand new, okay? Come follow me. But at the edge here, if you look where the edge of that red building is, see that red line on that building up there? Just to the right of that is Lori's apartment complexes. That's the beginning of where she lived, okay? So this becomes so close, less than 1/10 of a mile to that apartment complex. And the reason that's significant, because this gives Chad a reason to be in this area while he's having an affair with Lori.
Not only that, they're planning all of this, and if he ever got busted, he could say, I was just coming over to see you, Tammy, at school. Within 1/10 of a mile to her school. Within 1/10 of a mile. Or remember the other thought that we were having, Karen, was Alex looking for a better way, or Chad looking for a better way to take Tammy out closer to the school?
Exactly, because as we know, Tammy reported that she was shot at with a paint gun dart. Do I have that right?
Yeah, that's
Right?
that's
Remember a
we
couple of
have a
weeks
theory on
before
that.
she was killed October 19th?
Yep.
So could have been Alex.
So let's enter Brandon. Let's go to the storage facility, which we're going to see in this video here is going to be significant. The surveillance video is going to be significant in the upcoming trial. So this is the actual facility. Now, when this first came out, some folks were saying it's Alex, that is helping bring stuff in. But I was saying it's Chad because he's tapping her on the tush as she's going out the door, which subsequently now we all know it was Chad. Okay. But at the time when I said this in 21, when the surveillance video was out, it was a combination play. Could it have been Alex? Could it have been Chad? But I was always leaning towards Chad, and I got that one right. But what's interesting about this is Alex is already on his way. He's already headed to Arizona.
Right.
So
Now,
here we
this is, and I don't want to get ahead of what we're going to show in the video, but So you're going to see video. Okay, we filmed this in 2021, but the film that you're going to see that police released was filmed on October 2nd, 2019. A very interesting date because we already know that Alex Cox drove from Idaho back to Arizona, to Gilbert, Arizona, to take a shot at Brandon Boudreaux outside Brandon's house. And that was going on the same time. We're going to see footage of Lori and Chad bringing stuff into the storage unit.
Yep. And so I'm just, it's going to be fun to see how Lori is going to frame all of this stuff in the upcoming next round of Cuckooville in the next trial. See, she's going to have to frame this in somehow. What were they doing? Because at this point, the kids are dead.
The kids are dead. Tammy Daybell is still alive. So Chad actually was still married to his first wife, and they're moving stuff in and out of this storage unit on October 2nd.
We are in the storage unit in Rexburg, Idaho, where Lori, Chad, and Alex all went to this unit and put the kids' toys, took the tire out, the Jeep seat. When you go to the video, watch it again. As they're walking out, I think it's Chad, because what he does is he taps her right on the tush.
Right there. He taps her on the tush, and they're putting in the back seat from the Jeep. They're putting in the tire and all that stuff. And Alex has it, and he's on his way.
As she's on her way out. I don't think Alex would have done that. But the second time, you can see it looks clear.
When the second video that I didn't show here, they actually, on the way back, when he came back.
Clearly like Alex, that he's carrying the seat out and the tire. Chad rolled the tire in, Alex took the tire out. Right down there at the end of this hallway is the video camera that caught them unloading and loading all of the items that they put in here.
So now we're going to go to Daybell's property. And while we were there, it was interesting because one of the family members came out, but he wouldn't come out and talk. And I quite frankly wanted to talk to them, right, about their dad and stuff, but I also wanted to respect their privacy. But so we're going to take you there now. Which house is now gone? You destroyed it, right, Karen?
Yes, Idaho apparently has a penchant for destroying crime scenes. I'm far less, I'm glad, I guess, they got rid of the Chad Daybell crime scene. I'm still really furious that they got rid of 1122 King Road. That's another matter altogether.
Which was interesting. I was asked about that recently on Nancy Grace's show, what my opinion was in relationship to, can they match Bryan Kohberger's voice based on, Dylan hearing, I'm here to help. Could she make a voice identification? And I said, that's always possible because they can take that voice, they can, a judge, you get a search warrant for his voice like you would a bite mark or anything like that. You basically, they take his voice. But I said, here's the loophole that the defense will use. And guess what I said? Take a guess at what I said. No wrong answer.
I don't know. Tell me.
Well, that the defense is going to argue, well, we can't compare it because the acoustics of the house no longer exist. And
what do you know?
And the judge will say, you know what, defense, you're right. And Nancy goes, thanks for tipping them off, McDonough. I said, well,
yeah, I remember that.
That's the reality. That's the reality. So what was your first impression of this area?
So this area is fairly rural. The homes are spread far apart. You can see it's definitely rural. It's pretty. It's at the foot of the Teton Mountains. But obviously, when we pulled up to Chad Daybell's house, I got the creeps, knowing what happened on the property. And the area is it's rural. The people are spread out far enough where you can't see what your neighbor's doing in their backyard. But the area is very pretty. And again, just as I said, it's rural, picturesque, small town. What do you remember of it, Chris?
Yeah, I remember the Grand Tetons. You could literally see the Grand Tetons from Chad's backyard as they're slaughtering 2 children. The house is gone, as we mentioned. And if you're just joining with us, this was filmed in 2021.
So this is where all of this evil ended. Right behind me, as you can see, that tree is where the children were buried. And in front of that tree is the fire pit. But what's significant about standing here at Chad Daybell's house, okay, is the fact that the wind is a southwest blow. Why is that significant? Because if you look at this field, as they were burning the bodies, the wind was carrying that scent that way. And this is a significant, I think, piece of this puzzle, because this is a southwest prevailing wind and it always blows through this area in this direction. That is something that they considered, I'm sure of it. And maybe this goes towards connecting some of those searching on the internet for the wind variations.
Remember, Chad was searching and Alex were searching. They were doing Google searches about wind. Well, you would need to know that if you're burning, especially a body in this backyard, you'd want to take that into consideration, because if you think about it, if it's blowing the opposite direction into your neighbors, the neighbors are going to say, hey, what the heck is going on out there? Okay. But if you look at that field out there and it just goes for miles and miles and miles, that smell, unfortunately, is going to go forever. And nobody would really pick it up or try to, connect it.
So as I stand in front of Chad's house, one of the things I want to point out here is where Tammy's car potentially could have been parked. Why this is significant is this. At the time all those wind searches were being searched was right around deer season. A 6.5 round is the most popular round that can be also shot through an AR-15 that's modified.
Now, this is important to understand, because the ballistics here in these searches, a 6.5 Grendel round can fit into an AR-15. Remember that Tammy says she hears or there was reported that it could have been a paintball gun of some sort. What if they were also searching for wind variations that would, move the trajectory of that round, and a silencer was being used? So I was trying to think through the theory of, could it have been a paintball gun, or could it have been an actual weapon where none of the rounds actually struck anything that they could identify? And what led me to that was the FBI standing out front with metal detectors, looking for fragments and or shell casings.
Okay. What's significant about that is also in this area, silencers are well known to be utilized on those types of weapons. Now, that said, Tammy also reported that it was a paintball gun. Well, I want to submit to you one thought. What if it was a modified AR-15 with a silencer, okay, and that the wind variations, okay, would also be taken into account because of this huge field back here? Well, here's a thought. What if their intention really was to shoot at her from the field? So think about this. Here's where Tammy's car is. And by the way, I don't know if you saw the Dodge Dakota in the back there. I think Lori drove a Dodge Dakota at one point. So I don't know if this is the...
Before October 9th, investigators determined Cox went to a gun range to practice his shooting skills. According to court documents, Cox also searched the internet between October 8th, 2019 and October 12th, okay, about Glendale Drop and shooting through a Dodge Dakota. So here's the question, right? This is the 8th of October and the 12th of October. He's trying to figure out shooting from a vehicle. Okay. That's going to be an interesting piece of evidence here. And he's trying to figure out the ballistics. So here's the question. Does it apply to Brandon, or does it apply to Tammy? Or does it apply to both?
I would say it applies. Oh, well, I guess I would have to ask you a question. So I would say it applies to Tammy more than Brandon, because Alex took the shot on Brandon October 2nd and missed. Are you saying he was practicing to do something again?
Well,
or am I misunderstanding what you're saying?
No, you're exactly right, because what he's doing is checking wind variations, right? So the question is, obviously he failed, he missed, okay? And now he's being retained, for lack of a better term, to take out Tammy.
Well, he missed in Arizona, and now he's back in Idaho.
Right.
Right, working on whatever he's doing with Tammy.
Right. And he obviously, or something happened where she's not hit. Okay. So he's 0 for 2, hypothetically, okay, to where she's ultimately suffocated.
And his sister's probably yelling and screaming at him.
Well, which is interesting. Who else was suffocated? JJ.
Yes, JJ and Tammy.
You see, the mind of the killer is consistent. So who suffocates JJ? Is it Chad? Or is it Alex? Because Alex likes guns and cars. That seems to be a correlation here. But Chad likes to suffocate his wife and maybe JJ. We don't know.
It's a really interesting point you make.
Welcome to homicide.
One parked here at Chad's house. I don't know that yet. Okay? But what's interesting here is if Tammy was getting out of this car and she hears what she thinks is a paintball gun being fired at her, okay, maybe it's a weapon with a silencer and they just haven't found the round. But what I find really interesting is in this area, they were using metal detectors.
See, there they were out there with metal detectors. Why do you need metal detectors if there's no thought process of some type of trajectory and or fragments or shell casings or, knives or anything like that, right? Anything metal. In
the snow to find a shell casing. So that may be something that, folks, we need to take a hard look at here. But what's more important, in my opinion, is this vast field here, where if you did your homework, got your wind velocities, and you can feel the wind. Look at my hair. The wind is coming at me. Okay? It's not going behind me. Okay? And right over there is the fire pit. And right over there is the tree. Get the guy at the door.
That was Dylan was filming, and I saw this guy. Remember that, hon? He pops out. Dylan, and I'm like, Dylan, get the guy at the door, quick. Go ahead, hon.
Yeah, well, no, I would just say that you're allowed to be filming on a public street or a public sidewalk. End of story. Sorry if you don't like it.
I wanted him to come out. I wanted to have a conversation.
And I don't know if you just saw that, but somebody just came out of the house and started filming me, which I invite them out. Actually, it'd be kind of cool to talk to them. Okay? So now let's go down here. We're on the street. We're not on anybody's property. But this is the final resting place of this evil plot that played itself out. This is where the devil played that day, in this backyard by that tree, connected to this house.
It was so sad. There were 2 areas of burn. That was one. The other one's closer to the tree there by the water.
And 4 years later, I still have the same sick pit feeling in my stomach watching this again.
Well, as we look at the distance here, right on the other side of that house right there is Chad's property and where he landed. He actually landed in this area, obviously 4 years before all these murders. So if you look at the historical aspect of what's around him, if you come over here for an example, that's the Grand Tetons. That's his backyard. He's looking at that picture from his backyard. And then if we look at the history of this particular region, okay, these are a very proud people who came here to the St. Anthony area. It's part of the Lost Gold Trails loop, and it's a historical byway. Thousands of people have traveled across this road, okay, for a very long time. This is a solid community of really good people. And all of a sudden, Chad Daybell and the devil himself and herself show up in this God-fearing community, and they turn it upside down. Never has there ever been the slaughter of 2 children in a community like this. It's just unheard of. So I have to ask myself a question. What was it that caused Chad to select this area? Was it his ability to manipulate potentially the people and to tell his story the way he thought it was? Is it his ability to manipulate a religious ideology and concept to mold it to his sickness of his thought process? And then, of course, Lori. What can we say about Lori? She is a serial killer. There is no question about it. So she's been past feeling for a long time.
So the thoughts that we're going to have here in a second, and Karen, any thoughts on what we just watched?
You know, I'm glad we're kind of refreshing ourselves with all this. It's good to remember when we see her in the courtroom defending herself. She did it for this last trial that she lost, and she was found guilty, of course, of the murder of her fourth husband, Charles Vallow. We just need to remember, you know, she's treating it like a show, like a performance. The law does allow her to represent herself, but, you know, that's fine. But we all know the truth. We know how many victims this person is responsible for killing. This is a serial killer. This is a malignant narcissist, delusional, and those are actually very kind, soft descriptions of her. Just we haven't forgotten about this. She killed her two children and many other people. And, you know, juries aren't fooled by this. She might think that they are, but people see through this, you know, thank goodness. And, you know, we've got one more trial that we have to suffer through and watch her defend herself. But let justice be served. Let this story finally come to a conclusion, as much of the truth as we're ever going to get. And so that's what the court trial will let happen. And, you know, we'll get to see Brandon Boudreaux back on the stand. It'll be interesting when Lori cross-examines him, because she'll get that opportunity. But again, I would just say, let's always remember the victims here, as we do, and we're not fooled by this person. And at some point, she's getting off the national stage, going behind bars, and hopefully judges will not let her come, you know, be on media TV interviews, which I think is ludicrous. But that's just my opinion.
Excellent point, and well said. And so we thought these were the final thoughts that I had and that Karen and I both shared. So this is the high school that they would meet while they were in their evil romantic throes of adultery and murder. And determining, I couldn't help but ask myself, is this where all of these plans were not only being discussed post and or pre, and who else was next by these two as they walked hand in hand together around this track?
So I'm walking to the infamous track where Chad and Lori would walk. It's fascinating because as we take the steps that they took, holding hands, this idea, is it here where they're processing? And what kind of diabolical scheme are they planning? Chad's got his wife, and then they come here for their rendezvous, and here they spend all the time just holding hands and pretending. This big game of pretending. You know, what's really fascinating is as we also think about the drive up to Yellowstone with the children. On one hand, they're calling the children zombies, yet they take them to Yellowstone. They buy ice cream or a barbecue of some sort, okay? And it's as if they're hanging out with the zombies. I don't know about you, but I find that really, really weird. Okay? I want to thank you for trusting me and trusting our crew, our back room here on the interview room, to kind of give you some of the pieces on this story. We're just hoping that justice will come for these two children. And Lori right now is sitting in a mental facility getting evaluated. But as you heard from the people that hung out with her, or at least lived in the apartment and had interaction with her in the same apartment complex, they didn't think she was crazy. Okay? They think she's manipulating the system. You know, I have to agree. I think she's manipulating the system as well. And I think she'll be put on trial, fully competent at some point to stand for what she did for not only her own daughter, but that little boy, JJ. Until next time, thank you for being here at the interview room. Don't forget to hit subscribe, and please share this video out and hit that thumbs up. Thanks, have a great day. See you on the next one.
That's the courthouse. Fine. Before he was sent to prison. Now post-trial, they tore the house down. Final thoughts, Bear?
You know, as I said earlier, we have one more.
Oops, I just
What did
released.
you say?
I
Oh,
said,
I didn't even.
I call
That
her
one went
Care
over my
Bear.
head.
Remember Care Bear? You know, Care Bear.
Back in the
Anyway,
day, that's my nickname.
Nancy calls her Honey. I call her Care Bear, but Bear, it just slipped
I'll
down.
answer to it all.
She's the love of my life. She puts
Oh,
up
I
with
love
me
you,
to go to
sweetie. You're
stuff
so
like
sweet.
this. And she's just brilliant. But finish. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
No, I was just going to say that, okay, my final thought is we're not quite done yet with Lori Daybell, Lori Vallow Daybell. We have one more. Hopefully it will be as equally as short or a shorter trial. The trial for conspiracy to kill Charles was supposed to be, I believe, 6 weeks. The judge set that time aside. And thank goodness it was less. I thought the prosecutor did an outstanding job. Trina Kay did phenomenal. Can't even imagine what she had to deal with Lori representing herself.
If you only knew Bob, one of my old partners.
Well, hang on. I can share the name I call you.
It's up to you.
I call Chris Topher, and that's because it's a family nickname for him. Not surprising. His name is Christopher, and they called him Topher. So I call him Topher too. But anyway, so back to the next trial. It's going to start, as we said earlier, at the end of May. It's the same judge, Judge Boreski, the same prosecutor, Trina Kay, the same crazy, insane serial killer, Lori Vallow, representing herself. And I'm hoping at the end of that trial, she goes away and we don't hear from her again. And we, hope justice will be served for Brandon Boudreaux as well. So far, the system has worked pretty good. I know some people in chat had a question about why Lori didn't get the death penalty, why she only got several or multiple life sentences in prison with no possibility of parole. Do you want to answer that one, Chris?
No, she needs to rot. So does he.
Well, he's going to go before a firing squad because he got the death penalty.
Yeah. Lock and load. Ready on the right, ready on the left. Fire. There it is. Let's hit Bryan Kohberger though real fast on some of the autism defense real fast for the audience. I saw Maui put up a little thing about BK. In the beginning of tonight's program, I level set. I'm still convinced, that the entire house I'm convinced that, yes, Maddie was a primary target, but I don't think he would have stopped there. I think he would have killed everybody in that house. I just think things didn't work out, and I'm really believe that Ethan was a hero that night, and that kind of slowed things down. And I think he started at the top. I'm not convinced Susanna was asleep because she had just gotten the DoorDash, so she could have been moving, and they could have run into each other. Anything is possible. And then Ethan comes to the rescue, and then everything goes to heck in a handbasket. He's killed 4 at that point, but he's exhausted. So by the time he gets down to the bottom, he's out of gas. And it's by luck, in my opinion. And we now know, and I've said from the beginning, that everybody in that house was probably intoxicated because they were out partying. I mean, that's what kids do at that point. On a weekend, they're blowing off steam from college, and the finals and all the other stuff going on at that time, right? I mean, we have a college student right now, and we just met with him last weekend, and it was a time of year, but I think we're going to see some really interesting correlations. I've said from the very beginning, and I said it 3 years ago or whenever it was, you can go back and watch my videos. This guy was obsessed with serial killers, and I've come to the conclusion it was Ted Bundy. That's just my opinion. I could be wrong, but I'm not sure about that one right now. Just like we just played this, that was 4 years ago before any of this stuff happened, and it looked like I was batting 1,000 at that point. So hopefully I'll be vindicated in terms of that kind of stuff. But talk about what the judge came to the conclusion this week, Karen. Give everybody a summary.
The defense was shopping to the judge, as I like to say, this whole autism defense idea. And the judge in the case did not buy it. The judge ruled that Bryan Kohberger does not have autism to the extent that the death penalty should be ruled out. Another way of saying it, the death penalty is still on the table if the jury finds him guilty of the charges at the trial. And so this was another blow for the defense, because they had experts come in and interview him, and they put forth those experts' assessments. But at the end of the day, the judge said, nope, I don't buy it. Death penalty is still on the table. Let's remember the facts. These were 4 college students killed in their bedrooms while they were asleep. And so, this is a really sharp judge, Stephen Hippler, Ada County Superior Court Judge Stephen Hippler. So far, he's made a lot of really great calls ahead of the trial, pre-trial. And there's a few other points that were brought out this week. One of them was, I would call it an unconfirmed report, but nevertheless, it's still some interesting information, that Kohberger's mom is secretly sabotaging his defense. And I think you talked about that when you were on Nancy Grace this week on her show. And do you want to talk a little bit about that? Just what his mom is pushing for in the background, reportedly?
Yeah, his mother is basically telling everybody, according to reports, that admit nothing, and she's trying to, according to what's being said, take it to the hill. You didn't do this. Forget it. But the sisters aren't buying it. The 2 sisters, remember his 2 sisters, one of them is, is a psychologist, or she has a psychological, some type of therapy, practice. One of the sisters from the very beginning it was reported, was on board that, no, Dad, there's a problem in River City here with my brother. Now think about that. If in fact, she's a victim of this too. And let's also not forget that Bryan Kohberger was a heroin addict. We seem to forget that piece of the puzzle. This guy was slamming. We used to call it chasing the needle. And Bob knows, who was in the chat here. With every 4 to 6 hours, you're going to have to pump your body full of more opioids. And so, he recovers himself, through opioid addiction, and he goes to school, becomes successful. He's working on his PhD. But underneath, remember, that current of addiction is always there. It's like an alcoholic walking into a bar and seeing all the alcohol, but you can't touch it. Well, that has a tendency sometimes to build stress, to build pressure. And in criminal behavior analysis, one of the things we look for is, what are the triggers that push that over the edge? What triggers? And in my opinion, for Bryan Kohberger, it's rejection from women. He hates women. And even though he can disguise it, he wears this mask. That's why, in Dr. Bricado, when Gary did the profile on him, and when they found him, it was like, you just lay it over what Gary said, and boom, you have Bryan Kohberger. Okay. But that in of itself, when you have the sisters, your own sister saying, Dad, I'm not sure. What does that say? What kind of conflict was occurring in the family dynamics that your own sister saying he could be the guy? And, both sisters lost their jobs. The parents didn't ask for this. They certainly didn't ask for the slaughter of 4 college students by their son. So in a way, there's a victimology there as well. But there's also this, is there an enabling process going on here? And with Mom, you have her writing, about Ted Bundy, about, being against the death penalty for Ted Bundy. I mean, my mom didn't write a letter to the editor about serial killers. So what's that fixation? I want to know about that. And that was one of the things that set me into this thinking of, well, if Mom's thinking about Ted Bundy, at least in a defense mode, I don't know, what's he thinking and what's he's been exposed to as a kid? And how does that play into his research? What moved him towards criminology? What was it? The dynamics within, early on, there's something there. We don't know what it is yet, but something is there. And I guarantee it, they found it by now. And I've said a long time ago, you're going to see obsessive compulsive behaviors manifest itself in his electronic footprint. It'll be, it won't surprise me. There'd be porn and all this other stuff that's going to be in there. That won't surprise me a bit.
Well, and Chris, it's going to be very interesting. The prosecution has said that they're planning to call a few of Bryan Kohberger's family members to testify against him at the trial. And that is after a member of his defense team said the family is not planning to cooperate with the prosecution. So that will be a very interesting couple of days in court to see which family members the prosecution calls and, what information they get. And we still don't know, but we're told that the prosecution will have to give the list, give the names to the judge before the trial, at some point before the trial starts, because there is this whole back and forth that the defense is wanting Kohberger's family members to be able to sit in court and support their son through the trial. But obviously, if you're called as a witness, you cannot sit in court and hear the testimony before your testimony. And so there's a back and forth going on behind the scenes right now. And we're waiting for the judge. That's one of the couple things we're waiting for the judge to make a decision on is, number one, the list that the prosecution is going to have, what family members of Kohberger's are going to be in, what Kohberger family members are going to be called to testify. And the judge has already said at the last hearing, he wants that done early on. So he told the prosecution, get your game plan, whatever your game plan is, call those family members early in the trial so that Kohberger can have those family members be in the courtroom afterwards. But the judge was also very specific, saying that the law does not allow the same, the law doesn't afford the same rights to the victim families as the defendant's families. The victim's families come first in terms of seating in the courtroom, their ability to be there. And yes, the defendant, of course, is allowed to have his family members there too. But he said there's a legal distinction between victim family members' rights and the defendant's family members' rights.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting because, you know, in my experience, you just don't. I recently, I went to the jail to interview somebody, and people don't know what I do during the day, but I have a full-time job and I work as an investigator with an agency. I'm not going to say where because then I'll get bombarded. But long story short, I went to interview. So I'm not retired. Everybody thinks I'm retired. Connie, am I retired?
No, you work full-time, and then we have the YouTube channel.
Yes.
And you work with the Cold Case Foundation. So technically you have 3 jobs.
Yeah. And so long story short, I went and I interviewed this guy recently. I can't name names or anything like that. And he was telling me his story, yada, yada. And I asked him, I said, what are we going to find on your phone? And he just kind of looked at me. And long story short, it was horrific. One of the biggest fears that I had as a father raising boys, and from my perspective as a dad, I have always worried about, since 1993, when the internet first took off, the availability of inappropriate material, and that's what I'm going to call it. But you know, it's the P word. I don't want to use it on YouTube. The availability of that type of fuel. And Karen knows, my sweetheart knows, that in 1995, I predicted what was called the advent of the intellectual white-collar predator. And what my predictive analysis was that the predator would become smarter and smarter, and it would flush out all of the individuals that used to show up at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning for the ladies of the evening. But that would have what we would call a rebound effect against that creepy guy. And we've talked about him here on the show, you know, the trench coat guy. Where'd that guy go? He disappeared. Well, he didn't. He became a competitor to intellects in chat rooms. And when he can't win his victim, that individual has to expel the fuel. And that fuel becomes violence. And if Bryan Kohberger was looked at as a marginal individual in society, which he was, remember, he was a heroin addict. He was the same guy you would pass on the street in San Francisco. or, Kensington, wherever in Pennsylvania. And you would go, wow, that guy's messed up. The difference is he got hold of himself and he cleaned himself up a little. But the tendencies are there. So the question is, if he's getting rejected by women or girls, or, he's just not fitting in. Look how he addresses the officer, the female officer in the traffic stop. He's lecturing her about, well, I didn't know, can you explain that to me? Because in Pennsylvania, we don't have rules like that about crosswalks. If you just listen to the verbiage very carefully with him. And then think about the girl that he went on the date and he makes the comment, you've got good birthing hips. Okay. What? Who makes that? Who says that? Okay. I mean, ladies, in my sweetheart, she would have hit me with a frying pan, hypothetically.
You would have never said that. That's a comment from a psychopath or sociopath, in my opinion.
Right. Okay. So he's marginalized out here in male-female relationships. They're out here for him. He's not sure how to close that gap. Okay. So this is where Dr. Mercado was talking about the type of individual that would have done this type of problem, i.e. slaughter these 4 children, these 4 college students, will be marginally and recluse. He'll be that creepy guy. And that's where when I saw that brick, that cylinder at the bottom of the window, when Karen and I stood behind that house, I said, this guy is a voyeur. Whoever it is, he's a voyeur. And that means he's been rejected multiple times in real life. And what are the phone pings showing us? There's a high probability he sat behind that house for hours and watched Maddie and watched that house. That other room down there, by the way, was Dylan's room at the bottom on that floor. So it's going to be interesting to see how how he unfolds here. And if we look at, shifting gear real fast to Stephen Stearns in Maddie Soto's case, that guy, they found 35,000 photographs on his devices. Some of those were Maddie. And this is, I guess, that's the point I was trying to make earlier, where raising boys was one of the scariest things we had to do. Because it's like, hormones are going 250 miles an hour, visual, all of this stuff is going on, and we controlled the access. Karen and I had apps on our phones where we could just press an app and all of the device would shut down. All the apps would go away. And I can tell you conversation after conversation with youth, with boys, our son, look, there's too much stuff out there. We'd rather have you dislike us now than have to, like Stearns' dad, call him up and enable him with more horror books while he's in jail. Who does that, right? And so I think this is a time in the world that we've never, ever seen. And it's so dangerous. And we have to be vigilant as grandparents, as parents, as mothers, fathers, friends, aunts, uncles, neighbors. We have to look out for each other and for our children. We have to look out for our children because nobody else is doing it. Society's not doing it. Our culture's not doing it. Our way of life here in the United States has drastically changed in the last 20 years. If I told you half of the stories that I've experienced and seen, you would not follow me. because it'd be like, I don't want to take that guy out because of all the stuff that I've seen. I mean, I worked Vice from 84 to 86, and Bob knows, that is the most spiritually draining job you could ever experience. And today, this was 1984 to 1986. Here we are today. Oh my gosh. Just think if Ted Bundy had the internet. Think about that thought process just for a moment. If Ted Bundy had the internet, how much more dangerous would he be? Because he was desensitized. And that's what's happening to a lot of men in the world today. They're being desensitized. And you make that younger and younger and younger. We're breeding or preparing a generation in 10 years where women will have no value. Zero. And I did that predictive analysis in 1993 when the internet first came about we would see an uptick in violence in children. I've been teaching it ever since. And look where we are today. So I think Bryan Kohberger has not only does he have a mask that he wears and a secret life that is going to be so destructive when we all hear it, we're all going to go, holy cow. What? I really believe that's coming at some point. And I don't know what that means or how it comes together, but when I stood in the backyard and looked and saw what he saw, it was no different than standing at that fire pit with Chad Daybell.
I don't think we're going to be too surprised because there was such a heightened level of evil to be able to use a knife and kill 4 people that, yes, of course, we're going to be shocked and horrified, but then you're going to go, well, of course, somebody who is allegedly at this point able to kill 4 people, there's going to be a whole lot of nasty stuff in that closet. And we'll see what comes out during trial.
That is a great point, Karen. And it's a great way to end. We sure love you guys. We're so grateful that you stick with us. Please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We would greatly appreciate it. And please pass this around. Any other final thoughts, hon?
I would just say, let's just continue to remember the victims. And for these 2 cases, 3 cases really we've talked about tonight. With the Lori Vallow case, let's just continue to remember the victims: Tylee, JJ, Tammy Daybell, Charles Vallow, and Brandon Boudreaux, who, thank goodness, lived and didn't get hit. He's still a victim. And then, of course, in the Kohberger trial coming up, let's always remember the victims. And I know you guys do. Maddie Mogan, Kaylee Gonzalez, Ethan Chapin, and Santa Kernodle.
Yeah. And we're going to CrimeCon this year. So we're going to see.
We're looking forward to it. We're looking forward to meeting you guys and seeing as many of you as possible at CrimeCon. If you guys
want to hang out.
Go.
So aloha, everybody. Don't forget the people in Maui. They're still suffering as well from the fires, and the people in Southern California, not only in Paradise, but in Malibu. So, God bless you all. Have a good night. Take care of each other. See you on the next one.
Hard working every day, I'm stressed out 24/7, babe. No timeouts. Wish we could fly away. You and I go to our favorite place. Oh yeah. Make special memories together. I'll be your company. my face in Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. I need a summer breeze, some fresh air to put my mind at ease. No cares. You wanna come with me? Me and you go to our favorite tree. Are you ready now? We jump on a plane now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. Don't hesitate now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. We'll never come down. We're going away. Yeah, we're going away. You and me. Feeling the sun on my face in a while.